So I'm sure you're familiar with English pronouns and how to use them, but I have 5 tips that textbooks will never teach you. But first, allow me to introduce myself real quick to all of my awesome new subscribers. So I'm Cami, and I'm an American English teacher with over 10 years of experience teaching English to students all around the world. My goal as an online English teacher is to help my students build up their confidence in English so that they can feel more comfortable with daily conversations, nail their English exams, and open up more doors for opportunities in their lives, whether that's with getting accepted to their dream university or applying for their dream job. So don't forget to subscribe and join the Cam Fam so that you can get more educational content just like this to help you along your English learning journey. Okay, back to pronouns. Let's quickly review the 7 English pronouns. I, you, he, she, it, they, and we. So tip number 1 is all about animals. Now, a textbook might tell you to call animals it because he and she are for humans. But because so many people love animals so much, they don't want to give the same pronoun to an animal as they would like a tree or a rock. So they will often give the gendered he or she pronoun to animals. But for wild animals, it can be more difficult to identify if they're male or female. So people are more likely to give them just the it pronoun. But while that's okay with wild animals, do not refer to someone's pet as an it if you do know whether that animal is male or female. So in a lot of cultures, and especially in English-speaking cultures, our pets are considered to be part of our family. So if someone calls our dog or cat it, that's almost the same as calling our grandmother it, or our brother or sister it. That's pretty rude. Like, my dogs, I consider them to be my children. They are my fur babies. So if somebody knows that both of my dogs are males, but they still refer to my dogs as it, that's not nice, because rocks are its. This mouse is an it. My dog is my baby. Do not call him the same pronoun as a mouse. So how can you avoid this mistake? Well, first, if you're going to talk about their dog, just don't use any pronouns. You could say, your dog is so cute. What is your dog's name? Instead of what is its name. Another good thing to do is just listen to how someone talks about their pet. If they are using he or she pronouns when discussing their pet, use those same ones. It's as easy as that. So to recap, don't call people's pets it. Wild animals, it's okay, but not pets. Not okay. Maybe fish. Fish could be fine. Fact number 2 about pronouns that a textbook will not teach you. Sometimes people unnecessarily use gendered pronouns for objects. Now, I know in many other languages, gendered pronouns are used for objects. Like a mouse might have a male or female gendered pronoun. Table has a gendered pronoun. It's never it. But in English, those gendered pronouns are not grammatically correct when talking about objects. However, a lot of people will give gendered pronouns to things like vehicles and boats or ships. I don't know why, but I'll pop the reason up over here. Besides this, some people just like to use gendered pronouns to talk about their belongings because they think that it's cute. Grammatically, it is incorrect, but some people just do it anyways because they think it's cute. Tip number 3 is something that may be taught in some textbooks, but they certainly do not discuss the importance of it. And that is using they as a singular gender non-specific pronoun. Now, you may have heard about they being used as a form of personal gender identity, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm referring to is using they when the gender of someone is not important to the conversation. So, for instance, let's say you're talking about your neighbor. Maybe they're super loud. You don't need to say, my neighbor is so loud, I wish she or he would be quiet. Does their gender in this conversation matter? No. Is it an important part of the story? No. So if you said, my neighbor is super loud, I wish they would be quiet, that's completely sufficient. You can also use this when you don't know what the gender of the person is. So let's say you have a new neighbor. You haven't seen them before, and that person is just being super loud. You can use the pronoun they. My neighbor is so loud, I wish they would be quieter. So in that case, you're using they because you don't know what their gender is. So using they is really good when it doesn't matter, it doesn't add anything to the story, or if you just don't know. So that leads me to my 4th point, which is when you try to figure out the correct pronoun and say he, she, that ruins the flow of the conversation. So let's bring up that loud neighbor again. If you were to say, my neighbor is so loud, I wish he or she would be quiet, that really disrupts the flow. It makes it very awkward. And depending on who's listening, they might find it strange that you are so fixated on the gender of the person when it doesn't matter. Why do you need to specify whether they're male or female or whatever? It's not important to the story. On top of that, if you are taking an English exam and you do this he or she kind of hesitation, you will lose points because it disrupts the flow and it shows that you do not have that understanding of pronouns where you can substitute he or she for they. Let's take a look at how this he or she hesitation can directly impact your TOEFL speaking score. So you can see here for a score point for response, you do need to have a well-paced flow. That means you won't stop and have hesitation about the gender of the person that you're talking about. You can have a few little lapses and some difficulties, but overall, you should not be doing these awkward pauses. In addition, when we look at the language use, we can see that you need to have an effective use of grammar and vocabulary. When you know how to utilize they as a plural and a singular gender non-specific pronoun, that shows that you know the full range of its capabilities. Now let's take a look at a score point 3. the score point 3 does have the minor difficulties with pronunciation, intonation, and pacing. Right here, that key thing is that pacing is noticeable. When you say he or she, that is super noticeable. The scorer, and especially the new AI speech rater, is definitely going to pick up on that. Also, looking back over at the language use, we can see that it includes that somewhat limited in the range of structures. Again, if you don't know that they is multifunctional, then it's going to show up in your test if you're still trying to stick with the standard he or she. Now we can really see the effect of this he or she in score point 2, where it literally says choppy rhythm or pace. So these English exams really do want you to mimic the way that native English speakers use the language. And native English speakers do not have this he or she hesitation. So that really creates a lot of choppiness. It has no flow when you try and figure out, what's their gender? Again, it doesn't matter. And when you look over at the language use section, it says these limitations often prevent full expression of ideas. And that really can happen because when you waste time in the TOEFL exam trying to figure out your he or she, you won't be able to finish the rest of your idea because the TOEFL speaking is so fast. If you waste just a few seconds figuring out the gender of someone, you won't be able to finish your answer. And that is going to bring down your score. So do you really think it's that important to have the he, she? I don't think so. And finally, let's look at that score point of 1. Again, choppy, fragmented answers with pauses and hesitations. So if you're telling a story and you keep doing the he, she hesitation, that's going to bring your answer down. And then looking over at the language use, showing that range and control of grammar and vocabulary severely limit or prevent expression of ideas and connection among ideas. That's another big issue because often students, when they can't remember or figure out their he or she, they'll unfortunately end up switching between those two pronouns within their answer. So they might be talking about one female friend, but they'll accidentally refer to the female friend as she and her and he and him because the student cannot remember what the correct pronoun would be. So not only are you wasting time because you're hesitating with the he or she, you are then ruining the rest of your answer if you cannot remain consistent with whatever gender the person is that you're speaking about. So I do TOEFL exam preparations with a lot of my students, and I always tell them to just use the pronoun they, because it will always work, whether you're talking about a single person or many people. They will work in every situation. So if you're preparing for an English exam, using they can make it so much easier because you're only going to think about one kind of verb conjugation. Because, in general, I, you, they, and we all have the same kind of verb conjugation, right? I go to school. You go to school. They go to school. We go to school. Easy, right? But then with he, she, it, he goes to school. She goes to school. It goes to school. Those have the different verb conjugations. But if you ignore those gendered pronouns and just stick with they, it's so much easier. So try that out. If you're preparing for an English exam, just focus on using they, because the test takers don't care if you're talking about a friend who is male or female. They care that you're talking about your friend in a grammatically correct way. So going along with the discussion about using they, let's discuss how to not sound like a sexist asshole. Sometimes if you give a gendered pronoun, it can actually come off as being a little rude or, in some cases, misogynistic. So let me give you an example of how using gendered pronouns may come off as being a little bit sexist. So I've had a very similar conversation with a lot of my male students that goes a little something like this. My female boss gave us so many extra assignments because she wants to get the project done early. Oh, your female boss? Do you have another boss that maybe doesn't care about getting the assignment done early? No, I just have one boss and she made us do a lot of extra work. Okay, well, if there's only one boss, why do you need to specify that she's a female? Is there something important about that to the story? No, not really. Okay, well, let's think about it this way. If your boss was a man, would you say my male boss gave us extra assignments because he wanted to finish the project early? Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say that. That's weird to say my male boss. Yeah, most people don't say my male boss, my male coworker, the male engineer, male doctor. So why do we need to specify someone's gender if they're a female in these positions? You don't. It's unnecessary. So to relate this to pronouns, here's what you can do. Just say the person's title, like boss, coworker, friend, neighbor, and then use that pronoun. You guessed it, they. So instead of my boss gave us so much work because she wants to get the project done early, just say my boss gave us so much work because they want to get the project done early. Because again, in this situation, it does not matter what the gender of the person is. So just use they. So I also have a little bonus tip for you about the use of possessive pronouns instead of using possessive adjectives. And this is about a mistake that is actually super common among native English speakers. So here's what somewhat frequently happens. Instead of saying, "This is my cell phone, it is mine," someone might say, "This is my cell phone, it is my one." My one is not grammatically correct. Mine is correct. You can say that possessive adjective, my, and then the specific object, cell phone, but you cannot say my one. It's not okay. It's grammatically incorrect. And too many people say it. It makes me cringe. Every time I hear someone say, my one, your one, their one. No, it is mine, yours, theirs. Always. My one will never be correct. Ever. So that wraps up our lesson on 5+1 English pronoun tips that textbooks will never tell you. Write in the comments which one was the most surprising to you. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more English content just like this, and for private one-on-one English lessons where I can help you with daily conversation, pronunciation, TOEFL preparation, and writing corrections. Check out Cami'sEnglishCorner.com. And finally, if you'd like to hear some more of my thoughts on the English education system, check out this video right here. See you later. Oh. Is using... What are you doing? Did you finish your chewy stick? That's excellent. I'm happy for you, but go away.